Today we're going to be working on lesson 3, which is solving absolute value equations. Now to do that, you will have an absolute value equation like that. Absolute value of x minus 7 is equal to 5. Now, what does that mean? It means you are standing at 7 and you need to go 5 steps to get somewhere. Now remember, some of you might say, okay, I want to go 5 steps to the right. Some of you will say, no, I want to go 5 steps to the left. So you are standing at 7. So you take the opposite of the number. You're standing at 7 and you want to go 5 steps. You can either go 5 steps to the right or 5 steps to the left. Now think of this as you're standing on the number line, and that's 7. If you go 5 steps to the right, you're going to end up at 12. So that's your first solution. X can be 12. Or you can be going 5 steps to the left. So you're going to be standing at 2. Okay, you see that? 2 plus 5 is 7. And 7 plus 5 is 12. Okay, so the concept of this is to find basically distance. That's why absolute value can only be positive. So if I say absolute value of x minus 7 equals 5, it means I'm standing at 7. And I'm moving 5 steps to get somewhere. So when you stand at 7, you can either go 5 steps this way and end up at 12, so x is equal to 12, or you can be standing at 7 here and you go 5 steps to the left, so you're going to end up at 2, so x is equal to 2. So remember, this is the basic way of thinking about it, but sometimes the equations are going to be harder than that, like for example number 6 on our notes. So you need to find, this is a good understanding of absolute value equations, but we need to find another way to be able to solve absolute value equations. So let's move on and see what would be a better way of solving something like that. Remember, when we're talking about graphing absolute value equations, we always said that when we have an absolute value, we always have a positive portion and a negative portion, a left equation and a positive equation. So what would be the left equation of absolute value of x minus 7? Remember, it's a V shape. So there will be a left equation and a right equation. The left equation is going to be minus x minus 7. That's going to be my left equation. Okay? And the right equation is going to be just x minus 7. And that's going to be my right equation. So you can think of it this way, as taking the left equation of your absolute value and the right equation of the absolute value. Now I'm going to think of x minus 7 as my positive portion, and I'm going to put x minus 7 instead of the absolute of x minus 7 equals to 5, and I'm going to solve for x by adding 7 to both sides. So I get that x is equal to 12. And I can take my left equation, which is negative x minus 7, and replace this instead, and write this instead of absolute value of x minus 7 and put it equal to 5. You see that? So you are basically replacing the absolute value by its right equation and solving. You're replacing x minus 7 by the left equation as well and solving. Since you have two different lines, you will have two equations to solve. Okay? So let's subdistribute the negative and solve for x. Okay, so you subtract 7 from both sides, you get that negative x is equal to negative 2. We divide by negative, so x is equal to 2. So as you can see, we got two different solutions. So how many solutions do we have for this absolute value equation? 2. X can be either 2 or it can be 12. But remember, you always have to check your answers. So always check. So let's try it. Let's try 12. 12 minus 7 will be how much? 5. Absolute value of 5. Is it 5? Yes. So 12 worked. Now try 2. If you plug in 2 in your equation, 2 minus 7, what will that give you? It's going to give you negative 5. What's the absolute value of a negative 5? Always 5. Did it give you 5? Yes. So both of them worked. We have two different answers. Okay? Now let's move on to our next problem. We're going to think of it in the two ways that we discussed earlier. Okay? Now, remember that you always need to isolate your absolute value equation. So before, the absolute value was by itself, We didn't need to isolate it. It was already isolated. So let's move on to number 2. What do we need to do to isolate my x plus 9? Remember, think of the absolute values as brick walls. Nothing go in, nothing go out. You have to keep those together, x plus 9 together. You cannot distribute 2 inside. So you need to get rid of the 2. How can you do that? You divide by 2, so you have x plus 9 inside the absolute is equal to 13. Now the most basic way to think about it is that you are standing at negative 9. Okay, remember we always take the opposite of the inside. Negative 9. And you're moving 13 steps. You either can go to the right or to the left. Okay? So if I go from negative 9, 13 steps to the right, where am I going to end up at? You're going to end up at 4. If you go negative 13 steps, or basically 13 steps to the left, that's why it's negative 13. So negative 13 and negative 13, what will that give you? 21. Or basically negative 21. So you can either be at negative 21 or at 4. So x can be either 4 or negative 21. Now let's see, this is the most basic way of thinking about it. Take a minute and pause the video, try to do what we learned before, to do it algebraically. Okay, now remember this is not negative 21, this is negative 22, okay? So negative 22 and 4. So let's try to do this algebraically. Okay, algebraically, it means you have to first of all isolate the absolute value, so you need to divide by 2. So absolute value of x plus 9 is equal to 13. To solve this, you have to take the left equation and the right equation. The left equation is going to be the negative 1, and the right equation is going to be the positive 1, okay? So, the positive 1, it means you replace x plus 9, you replace the absolute value of x plus 9 by the positive portion of it, okay? So x plus 9 is equal to 13. This is going to be my first equation. Now my second equation is that you replace absolute value of x plus 9 by negative x plus 9, negative parentheses x plus 9, and equal to 13, and you try to solve each one of them to get what x can be. Now remember, this is going to be your right equation since you have a V shape. You have 2 different lines, so 2 different equations, 2 different solutions, okay? Now, if you want to solve this, you subtract 9, so you get x to be 4, okay? So that's the first solution. Then you distribute the negative, and you get that negative x is equal to 13 plus 9. So negative x is equal to 22. So x is equal to negative 22. So that's your second solution. Remember to always check. Always check in the main equation, okay? Remember that. So make sure that you didn't make any mistake. Plug in 4. 4 plus 9 is how much? 13 times 2, 26. Because the absolute value of 13 is just 13 times 2, 26. So we checked that and it worked. It's better to show me the work, so I'm going to do the work for the other one. 2, negative 22 plus 9, and then you have equals to 26. Now remember that negative 22 plus 9 is going to give you negative 13. Absolute value of negative 13 is just 13, and that will give you 26. So yes, this too worked. So yeah, we have 2 solutions. One of them is 4 and the other is negative 22. Now let's try the other one. Absolute value of 3x plus 5 is equal to 14. Remember, the first step is to always isolate the 5, or isolate the absolute, I mean. So you have to subtract 5 from both sides. So absolute value of 3x is equal to 14 minus 5, which is a 9. So that's going to be your absolute value equation. Now it means, remember, this is now getting harder. So the basic value or basic way of solving absolute value equations is not going to work maybe here and maybe the problems that we're going to be covering. So let's think of it as writing the right equation and the left equation. So remember, it's going to be a V shape. We have a left and a right equation. The left is going to be the opposite and the right is going to be the same thing. So you replace the absolute by 3x, or you can substitute negative 3x for the absolute. Okay? And let's solve this. Divide by 3, so x is equal to 3. Divide by negative 3, so x is equal to negative 3. Again, we have two solutions, but remember you should always check your work. So plug it in. 3 times 3 is 9, absolute value of 9 is 9, plus 5 is 14, so it did work. Plug in this one. 3 times negative 3 is negative 9, absolute value of negative 9 is just 9, plus 5 it's 14, it also worked, so we have two solutions, 3 and negative 3. And that would be the end of our lesson 2-3. For now, we'll have more problems to cover.